That's right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How you doing here today? I am almost fine. Let's put a little light on the subject. There you go. I don't look so gray now. How you doing, everybody, this afternoon? I've got a great show for you. We are going to be, as you know, right here, Facebook Live. We're also on the radio, 98.5 FM, 1450 AM. And my very special guest today is Dr. Kimberly Baker. She is a Food Systems and Safety Program Team Director and an Associate Extension Specialist with Clemson University Cooperative Extension Service. That is a mouthful. She must be getting paid big bucks. That's all I can say. Or they just gave you a good title and aren't paying you at all. And then I've got Stacy Kirby. He also works for Clemson Extension. I think he's a food specialist, food service specialist, but no title like what Kimberly's got here today. So how are you doing today? Everybody, how are you doing?
We're doing good. How are you?
Great. This is going to be a really fun show because whoever thought that knives could be talked about on the radio? Now, this is part of the trick to it. But it's because we do Facebook Live, and we hope that after this show, if you're driving home and you want to know more about this, that you'll go back and watch this right there on Facebook Live, WCRS 98.5 FM, 1450 AM. Or tomorrow, you'll be able to see it live, or not live, but rebroadcast from our website at WCRS1450am.net. So either way, you can watch it, but I hope you'll get something out of it. You know, can I just call you Kim, or do I have to call you Dr. Kimberly Baker?
You can just call me Kim.
Kim, okay, great. You can call me Kim.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. It is really fascinating, and every time I do a program like this, you can learn so much. But where are you from, and how did you end up in South Carolina? Because I think you're not really from South Carolina originally. And when you were growing up, what did you want to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania, a little town called Newcastle that is northwest of Pittsburgh. And, I really enjoyed growing up there. Love seeing the snow, but I kind of got tired of it.
I'm from Maine. I understand, yeah.
It just got a little bit cold.
Right.
When I was growing up, I always wanted to be in the mix with food. One of my biggest aspirations was that I wanted to work with school food service. I've always
that's really odd. That's really odd. Is that odd? Who grows up wanting to be in food service at a school, right?
Yeah. Most people not, but for me it was.
Right, that's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, I loved food. I loved cooking for others, and even when I was in 7th grade, I did my first meal for my entire church. It was a mission meal, but it was a Mexican theme, and I think that really is kind of what spawned it. Is I just love cooking for a large group of people and seeing them excited for the food that I prepared for them, nourishing them. So that really, I think, kind of was what spawned that idea. I've always loved the area of culinary arts, but at the same time, I knew that I probably wanted to grow up and have a family and not live the life of a chef working holidays, weekends.
Late nights
and not being able to work with my family. So I decided to do things a little bit opposite than the normal, because why should I be cookie cutter normal? And I went to school for dietetics, food and nutrition, became a registered dietitian, but still had a lot of food service experience throughout that time. And so then once I got done with school in Pennsylvania, I was like, really tired of this cold. So I had the opportunity to go to Johnson & Wales in Charleston and do an advanced standing program. So I was able to get my associate's degree in 9 months rather than 2 years. And so I was like, after 9 months, if I don't like, South Carolina or the warm weather, then I can always go back home. Well, it's now been about 20 years, and I'm still in South Carolina.
And you were actually the last class of that school in Charleston, correct?
Yes, I was. I was the last graduating class of the Charleston campus for Johnson & Wales. They've since moved to Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. Now, what did you do after you graduated then?
So I worked with the Citadel with their food service operation where I did my culinary externship. They needed a registered dietitian on staff. I helped with catering. And then
Did you find your husband there, just out of
I
curiosity?
did not.
I just thought I'd check. I thought, that could be interesting. Yes, okay.
No, I found him in Anderson.
Anderson. Okay.
I did.
Okay.
So fortunately, because I probably wouldn't have found him that way, is that Clemson asked me to move up to Clemson because I was a registered dietitian and they needed one for their contract. So I moved up there and worked with their dining services for 3 years. And in that job, I found my passion and my love of teaching food safety. So then I was really fortunate to, about the same time, find my husband and find the extension position. Started as an agent in Greenville and have kind of moved my career since then to what I've done now through today as an associate and now a specialist.
I think years ago, back in the dark ages, which is maybe 20, 25 years ago, nobody was that concerned about food safety, were they?
No,
I mean, it really has changed. Can you speak to what brought about the change?
Absolutely. A lot of science has evolved, understanding of foodborne illnesses and what's causing them, where they come from. It used to be that that we would know that someone was getting sick from food, but having that traceability to know what food caused them to get sick just wasn't there at that time. Now we've gotten to the point where, particularly with our produce, we can get to the point of identifying that field, that plant, and that person potentially that picked that produce that caused illness, which then helps us identify, was it the person, was it the irrigation water, was it that deer running across the field, all these different things that play a part in food safety. So we're able to identify, and we used to be very reactive in our food safety, foodborne illness outbreaks, but now we can be a lot more preventative because we've learned through all of these, what are the main instances that are causing foodborne illness outbreaks and how can we prevent them in the home, in a retail establishment, and in a manufacturing plant.
Right. I have interviewed people that have worked with Clemson for years, and I literally remember when they started coming up with a food safety program. That was actually not that long ago, really. And so it is amazing, and it's also amazing how many people have no idea about how important it is to put stuff up after you've eaten it and not leave it out for tomorrow morning or whatever, right?
Absolutely. Even back with my parents' age, they would make Sunday dinner and let it sit out all day long, and just kind of graze off it all day, or having that stick of butter sitting out until it was gone,
right?
Multiple days.
Right.
But again, it's like playing roulette. You might not get sick, but then if you get sick, you could get really sick. So it's having that knowledge to be able to ensure that your food is safe for yourself and for your family. And some people are more susceptible to getting sick than others.
Absolutely. Well, this is going to be a fascinating day today. We have assembled some knives here and some vegetables. And what did you hope to show us here today, Kimberly?
So I wanted to show you a little bit about the different knives that are out there.
What do we need different knives for, Kim? You take that one favorite knife you have and you chop everything, right?
Yes, some people do, but I don't recommend it.
Okay.
Because not only are we talking about food safety, we're talking also, when we talk about knives, of physical safety. Last I checked, most people want their 10 fingers. They don't want cuts. So, it's really important to use the right knife for the right task. Right. If we're going to use our small little paring knife that everybody loves to cut this onion, it's still not the best knife for the task, but right. It's doable. But if you take this knife that's so small and put it to your cantaloupe, your watermelon, something that is much larger, that really poses a safety risk because it's very likely that you're going to cut yourself. So it's really important not only for food safety, but also for just your physical safety. And it's easier. You know, it shouldn't be that you're tackling that vegetable like you're wrestling it. You shouldn't have to put as much effort as you might think that you have to if you're using the right knife. A lot of times, the chef knife is the one to go to, but a lot of people are really, really afraid of that size of that knife. So it takes practice and it takes confidence, but it really is going to make it easier on you in the kitchen.
Now, one of the things I think that a lot of us are guilty of is not working with a sharpened enough knife. And, we just, well, it worked yesterday. What's wrong with it today, right? Right?
Yes, absolutely. A dull knife is a unsafe knife. So we want to make sure our knives stay sharp, because we want it to be able, as we're cutting into, the pepper itself, to be able to get into the pepper and cut down, versus, again, you're trying to fight it, rock with it, and then next thing you know, it slips off of that piece of produce or whatever you're cutting. So it's important to keep that knife sharp, but you also have to understand the process. So a lot of times in kind of more the high-end type knife kits that you'll find, you'll see these, you'll call them either a honing blade or a steel, sometimes it'll be called. So these don't actually sharpen your knife. But what happens,
come on. Wait, are you sure about this now? Come on. Are you an expert about this?
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little.
She knows what she's talking about, folks. And by the way, if you're not watching and you can watch, you should watch this, because you're actually able to see what she's doing. We have added another camera here, so it really is kind of exciting today. Okay, Kim,
Yes,
go ahead.
absolutely.
Sorry.
No worries. So this steel, or again, this honing blade, is really going to take out any of the different deviations or the bent pieces that you really don't see on your blade. So it just makes it straighter. It is not sharpening it, but it's going to feel like it's been sharpened. Now, one thing that's important when you use these is that you also use it on both sides, because again, you don't want to be straightening out one side and not the other. So you usually hold it at about 20 degrees and go from the heel of the knife all the way to the tip of the knife. Now, a lot of times on cooking shows, you're going to see the chef go really fast with it. And you can do that.
Right.
But here I'm going slow so you can see what I'm actually doing.
Or when you're cutting that Christmas turkey, right?
Exactly.
Right?
It really puts on a good show.
Right.
But yeah, it's super important to be, using that honing blade so that you can keep the edge straight. However, it's important to upkeep the sharpness of your knives. If you have a less expensive but good knife, it's perfectly fine to use those store-bought kind of sharpeners that you can hold with your hand and put the blade through, and it will sharpen it. Some of the more expensive knives, I would recommend finding a professional that can actually sharpen it with the three-sided knife sharpener that can really make sure that the blade itself is angled appropriately and done very crisply. So about once a year, if you can professionally sharpen them, that's definitely important. Some knives, like a serrated knife, you can't sharpen at home. So again, a professional may be able to if they have the right equipment, or there are some really good knife companies out there that will replace the knife for you if something like this becomes too dull. So again, you look at the manufacturer, talk with the manufacturer's website. A lot of times you can get a hold of them there and see what is best for that care of that knife.
Now, how do you know what a good set of knives is? I mean, because, I remember the Ginsu knives of days of old. You could buy a whole set. It was good forever. But no, how do you know what a good knife is?
Great question. So there's a lot of different things that you can look for in knives. Of course, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, the more expensive is probably a good indicator that it's a good knife. But here are some things to take a look at. First of all, if you look for knives that are made of high carbon steel, that's the best, because it will hold that sharpness on the blade a bit longer than other types of metal. The other thing to look for is what we call the tang. We're not talking about the drink. So if you see here on this knife, This one is very evident, and a lot of knives, but not all knives, will have a tang that you can see. And this just means that you have the entire blade, it's one piece, and carries through all the way through the handle. So this gives a lot more sturdiness. If you've gone to a dollar store and gotten a really cheap knife, oftentimes, that handle is what's going to fall off first.
Right.
So it does not have a very good handle or tang that's keeping this riveted. This knife here is almost 20 years old, which is hard to believe. And, it's still in absolute perfect shape. You don't see any gaps or anything like that with that. So, definitely look at that. Also, just a balance. You can get a knife, put it in your hand, feel it. That can also make sure that if you feel kind of that good balance between the blade and the handle, that usually gives a good indication that that's a good hand or quality type knife. And, beyond that, I say don't just go and purchase an entire set and call it good. If you can get in person and put that knife in your hand, that really is better. Because I have several different chef knives at home and other different brands, and you see some different handles here, some really good knives that you don't see the tang on it, although it is full tanged inside, but you can see that that handle's a lot thicker than this type blade or this handle. So how it feels in your hand is important, because for me, I like this chef knife because it feels good in my hand here, but if I'm moving to my paring knife, which is smaller, it's still a good quality knife, right, but it has a thicker handle. To me, this just feels a little bit more sturdy, being a smaller knife.
Naturally.
So some of it has to do with personal preference here.
Absolutely. So that's why sometimes, it might not be that you want an entire set that comes from the same brand, because different knives of different sizes and shapes may feel better in your hand than others. So if you can give them a good test drive, that usually is my advice before you go buying a complete set.
Okay. All right. So what are we doing here today, for now that we've had a little pre-talk about knives here today? What are we looking to do here today?
All right. Well, first, I've got several different knives here to show you what tasks that they are best with.
Okay.
And then we can even get into some actual cuts of some of the produce that I brought with me. So the first knife that which you've already been kind of looking at is the chef knife. These can come in an 8-inch knife, a 10-inch knife, which this is, even at a 12-inch knife, which is even longer. So again, that's why I say don't just pick up any kit, because feel the knife size that you like. Think about what you're cutting. Do you ever cut whole watermelons in your house? If so, you might want, a bigger, longer chef knife to have on hand. If you never cut a watermelon or anything,
or maybe
big,
you need a sword, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. So think of the different tasks that you commonly do at home for what size and what feels best for your hand. So a chef knife really is pretty much an all-purpose knife for nearly almost every task in the home, chopping, basic slicing, things like that. I'm going to go up to a boning knife, which also sometimes you'll see knives that are similar to this that are more of a utility knife. But what's the difference with a boning knife is, if you can see on camera, that this blade actually bends, and you can put it on here. So when you're boning a chicken or any other type of meat cut, you can get around the bones very easily, and you have less waste. So this is when a good boning knife works well. And again, these can also be really sharp, so you can just get the nice ease of cut, versus something, if you're even using a chef knife or a serrated knife with raw meat, it's a lot more difficult. Next is a serrated knife. This is really good for tomatoes if you're slicing, but then also a lot of our baked goods do best with our serrated knives, and cooked meats will mostly do well with a serrated knife. So that's why you see with this one, and you'll see all different kinds, and bread knives tend to be a little bit longer, but this again can be used for smaller pieces of bread, but you'll see that it's kind of more of a flat blade versus our chef knife, which is more of a rocking blade, which I'll show you when we get into our knife cuts, why that's important. We also have another type of slicing knife. You can see the difference where this is more of a straight line knife versus the serrated. And so this also works very well for cutting meats, and also has a little bit more of that flexibility like the boning knife. So you can see how that has some leverage there. And then our very typical paring knife. Again, you see these in all different shapes and sizes, different lengths. This is a shorter one. I have some that are a little bit longer, often used for those small tasks. If you're cutting up a lemon for your sweet tea, it'll do just fine. Some of these other cuts like we're going to do today look like they'd be appropriate for a paring knife, but really it's going to be much easier on you and your wrists if you use a chef knife. So I think in the home we often overuse a paring knife, but they definitely have their place. So everyone should certainly have, if they ask, what knives should I have, a chef knife, a utility knife, which may or may not be also a boning knife, and then a paring knife and a serrated knife. So really, there's 4 basic knives that everyone should have. Again, you may have a few others, just depending on different tasks that you typically do, but these are the 4 most common knives to have at home.
All right. Well, I hope people are checking out our video here, because it is pretty cool that you're able to show them all these knives pretty close and up personal. I mean,
Yes.
this is pretty cool. Now, what about, I'm just throwing this out before we actually start doing some cutting and everything. What about steak knives? Everybody always talks about steak knives.
Yes.
Individual steak knives.
Definitely. So a steak knife is going to be a bit more sharper than your table knife. So if you are cutting into a tougher piece of meat, then it's going to have a type of blade. Usually it's kind of a cross between a straight blade and a serrate. It's going to have just a little bit of serration. And so
Finer teeth, really, isn't it? Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. So that will cut into your steaks, but it's going to be a smaller knife to fit, on the table,
Right.
with the rest of your silverware.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. So we are about to look at doing some cuts here. I think it would be a good time to take a quick break. So we'll be right back. We are here with Dr. Kimberly Baker and with Clemson Extension. She has a long title. Let's just say she knows a lot. Is that okay, Kim?
That's great. I appreciate that.
And we're also here with Stacy Kirby. He is a person that anybody that ever ate at O'Charlie's knew.
That's true.
That's true. That's true. And now has landed this great job working with Clemson Extension in food safety and canning, and he has just gone to town on doing a lot of great things with Clemson Extension. I know that Clemson Extension is glad to have him on board. So we're going to take a quick break. On the radio, you will hear some commercials. On Facebook Live, you're going to hear some music. So don't you go away. We will be right back. This is WCRS Radio. If you have a question or a comment, you know what to do. 864-229-7984. Or you can comment on the video and we will try to answer your questions right here while Dr. Kimberly Baker and Stacy Kirby are here, both from Clemson Extension. We'll be right back. Take it away. Yay. Well, we are right back here at WCRS in our cooking studios this afternoon. I'm very impressed with our cooking studios here. We added an extra camera last night, and unlike the last time, I'm not having to hold my phone to record this, so as we made jam the last time. So life is good today. Life is good today, and I sure am excited to have Dr. Kimberly Baker, Food Systems and Safety Team Director and an Associate Extension Specialist with the Clemson University Cooperative Extension Service, and our own local Stacy Kirby, who does a lot of food safety and programs all around our area. Now, before we actually start cutting, maybe Stacy, we want to tell the folks about some of the programs that you have coming up over there, because I believe you have a knife skills class coming up. It's on the 27th, I believe.
That's correct.
And so that is on the 27th. That's from 1 to 4 at the Greenwood Extension office. And look, you're getting a free class this afternoon, aren't we? Yeah, it's going to cost $35, which is very reasonable.
Right.
But what can you tell us about that program?
Well, of course, Dr. Baker will be there, which will be very helpful. And she'll, again, will review the knives and the proper cuts of different vegetables and so forth. And I'm thinking that what we're doing is that everyone will learn how to use the different knives, learn how to do different cuts, and then we'll be using the vegetables, if I'm not mistaken, to make a soup this time. Or salad one.
Yeah, super salad, something.
We haven't decided which
Super
one.
salad, I sound like a special.
Right, whatever the case may be. So we'll teach how to do the cuts, what knives to use for what particular product that you're cutting, and then we'll go ahead and use the product for one recipe or another, either a soup or a salad. But it should be a lot of fun.
And do you have any space left in that class?
We do.
Okay.
You can sign up to Eventbrite. That's really all you really need to know. It's really easy to sign up. We're looking forward to having everyone that could possibly join us.
That's right. So that is a knife skills class that is on August 27th from 1 to 4 at the Greenwood Extension office. Now, where is that office?
It's at 105 North University Street, or the old Brewer Middle School building.
Right.
Behind it is where the Boys and Girls Club is. You just literally go into the side, and there's a big sign that says Clemson University Extension Office. And as soon as you enter, there'll be directions to go actually back to the conference room. And we have individual stainless steel tables set up, and knives will be there, and the product and everything. And we'll invite you in and have a good time, get to know each other. It becomes more of a community event. We kind of have fun like we're doing today. We have a good time doing it, enjoy ourselves.
No, that's great. That's great. Do you get to have dinner afterwards?
Whatever we prepare.
You will be
Okay, all
fed.
right. Well, okay. Could be an early dinner. There you go. All right. Then you're doing classes all over the place, aren't you?
We are.
I think you have one Basics of Pressure Canning Workshop September 9th in McCormick.
That's correct. We are.
Yeah.
And then that same month, I think the 23rd, we're doing pressure canning proteins, which we're excited about that.
Now that means meats, right?
Exactly.
Meats.
Exactly. We're getting close to deer and hunting season and so forth. A lot of people want to know how to preserve those meats and so forth. So we're going to be teaching how to pressure can and preserve those as well.
And when we have a hurricane on October 1st, everybody will be ready, right?
That's for sure.
Yeah. What does it mean when you do meats and everything? It is a little different, isn't it, Stacy?
Well, I mean, you have a raw pack and you have a hot pack. There's two ways, of course, in order to prepare meat as far as that's concerned. The pressure canning process, though, is basically still the same, but the amount of time in which you pressure can, as well as the pressure that is used, can differ depending upon the product that you're processing. Generally speaking, proteins tend to take a lot longer to process, of course, than vegetables do. Mm-hmm. But basically, that's it.
Now, a lot of people are afraid of a pressure cooker, right?
Yes, they are.
And a pressure canner isn't that the same type of? Is it the same type
It's
of
the
principle?
same process as far as
Right.
that's concerned, but nowhere near the same animal, let's just say.
Okay.
A pressure canner, I think I can safe to say that the pressure canners and pressure cookers of the past are much more, or they were more unstable than the ones are today. There are so many safety features today between pressure valves and petcocks that release pressure, and it's pretty hard to
You
to
know, a
hurt
lot
yourself.
of people back in the old days, that pressure top would come off and everything would end up on the ceiling. I mean, I know
Exactly,
a lot
yeah.
of stories about that, right?
Exactly.
So that's not going to happen in today's world.
No. It's almost well, I don't want to say impossible. It's very hard for something like that to happen. Let me just put it that way.
Okay. So really, if somebody is doing pressure canning or whatever, they should make sure they have newer equipment.
Yes, I would definitely say so. The newer, the better. And of course, we have the ability to check the pressure canners every year. You can bring them by any of the extension offices, and we can test them for you. Check the gaskets, check the gauge, and make sure they're showing the right gauge. Make sure that all the valves are clear and clean, and make sure that your gaskets, none of them are rotted or need to be replaced.
I didn't know you did that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do it anytime.
You know, that brings up an interesting point, Kimberly. You know, what started we have Clemson Extension all across this country, we have this. What started that program? Why do we have that program today?
So, you know, years ago, back in the 20s, you know, in early century, you know, a lot of people couldn't afford a college education, and, you know, they were essentially homesteading, farming, you know, keeping the house, things like that. And so in order for someone to get the information from a university, it was for the extension agents to come out to that farm or to that mom and, you know, canning her goods from the garden and making sure that it was done safely or most profitable way to do it. So that's really when it started. And actually extension started in South Carolina, which is really neat, with Frank Lever and legislation and Thomas Green Clemson. And so that actually kind of led out to the start of all extension services at land-grant universities across the entire nation. So
Started at Clemson.
Started at Clemson.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Exactly, yes. And a lot of the agents, you know, in those early days, they would actually get on a train and, you know, get to their, you know, next neighboring farm or place where they were going to go educate those people for the day. And, you know, there were homemakers that would go into the homes and teach the mom of the family, you know, how to can their food safely and how to sew and, you know, just do all the things profitably that they could for keeping the house. And the ag agents would go out and, you know, teach the farmer how to ensure that they got the most profit out of their crops and out of their animals. So that's
You know,
where it
that's
all
really
started.
neat, isn't it? I mean, you know, that there was a mechanism to make this happen. And that people were able to succeed because they had this education. Because otherwise, if you just think about it, how many people could have died?
Absolutely. Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
From not knowing how to do stuff properly, or, well, that's the way Grandma did it, right? Yeah.
And we still hear that.
Yeah, exactly. We do still hear that. So I just wanted to mention that because I think that is a cool part, and particularly that it actually started in South Carolina. I think that's pretty darn cool. All right, so what else has Stacy got here? We've got proteins. That's over there in McCormick. Then in Abbeville, you're doing a demonstration on making pickles at home. That's in Abbeville at the library on September 11th.
That's correct.
That's right. 6:30 to 7:30, and there's no cost to that one. Then when are you going? Back to the 25th, back to the Abbeville County Library, and you're doing pressure canning.
Right.
6:30 to 7:30. And then what else? We do have a couple here in Greenwood on September 18th at the library. You're doing jams, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. At 12 to 1, and there's no cost for that. And on the September 29th, you're doing another one, at the Greenwood County Extension Office on making jams, preserves, and jellies. And that's a longer program, 1 to 4.
Yeah, it's a workshop. We'll go through the safety procedures and the correct way of processing jams and jellies and the different types of jam, jellies, and preserves. And then we'll actually make one or the other. A very popular one, of course, is the one that we did on your show not too long ago, is the blueberry lime. But there are some others that we may choose to do as well. But that's probably the most popular one that we do.
What did we do? We did pickles with Rhonda.
Rhonda
right?
Matthews.
Rhonda Matthews years
Yeah.
ago. We did
Which
pickles.
will be-
And this is when we didn't have live video, but we still did it. I mean, it was amazing. People are going, how are you doing this? And we're just doing it. Just follow along. Yeah, we had a good time. Rhonda was always up for a challenge. Yeah,
yes, she was.
All right, so let's start looking at what you want to do with the knives. So what are we going to do with knives here today, Kim?
Perfect. I'm going to show a few of our basic cuts that we commonly use. So I brought some very common produce that we might use at home, and I'm going to show it with the chef knife because that's the best knife for the task for all of these things that I'm going to show. One of the things that we first want to take a look at before we even start cutting anything is making sure that we're holding the knife safely. A lot of the better quality knives will also have this heel, so that's where we can really tuck our knuckle and our finger down underneath and keep a safe grip, so that we're not moving too much up onto the blade where we might potentially cut ourselves. The other thing is a lot of people will naturally want to cut and have their index finger on the very top, but when you do that, it actually leaves room for your wrist to kind of move back and forth, and you don't want that. So you want to make sure you have the correct grip on that knife, because once you do this, it's really harder for your hand to kind of rock back and forth, but it's more easier to kind of leverage more of that rocking motion. The other thing that you can do, and again, this takes practice, but some tasks you can actually get your hand up a little bit more onto the blade itself, and you can see how I have that here. So I still have my 3 back fingers kind of under that heel, but I've actually then moved my forefinger and my thumb up to stabilize on each side of that blade to give it a little bit more stability as I cut. All becomes personal preference on how that feels, and it takes practice to get that feel, but you want to have one of those 2 grips. And I'll start with our potato here to demonstrate.
You brought an onion. Did you want to cry or yourself a river at this show?
Yeah, we are going to do a little bit of crying over that onion, because a lot of people ask how to cut an onion easily,
right?
And so we're going to do that too. So get ready and get your Kleenex.
Okay.
So when we get something that's more like a root vegetable, sweet potatoes, since they're a little bit harder, one of the first things we want to do is make sure that we have a surface that's flat, so that as we make our cuts, we're not having that item kind of rock on us. So it doesn't matter which side you want to start on. We're always going to start at the very end of our knife and rock down. So I'm kind of pushing down here, but I'm just leveraging. I'm not putting a lot of effort in my wrist or even my arm. It's a motion, but there's no major pressure that's happening as I cut down. But now I've made a flat side, so now as I go to cut and do the rest of my pieces, I'm going to have a sturdy area.
So are you
to
making
work
French
with.
fries? Is this what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All
This
right.
is the first thing I'm going to do. Is now we want to call it the French cut. It's the baton.
Okay. Okay. Let's get formal here.
We're going to get some formal pieces here. Now in classic cooking, we do have a lot of food waste. Here you're going to see me having a little bit of waste because I just want to show you the cuts.
Right.
In a home setting, I would not be just throwing these away. I'd be cutting these up a little bit smaller and using them as well. But if we get to the nitty-gritty when we're cooking, we do want to have our cuts to be very similar, so that as we cook something, everything cooks at the same rate.
Sure.
So if I was making potato soup and had really big chunks and really little chunks, well, then those little chunks are going to turn mush
Right.
before we actually get those cut. So it's one thing to consider as we get into cutting. How are we going to cut, what sizes we're going to cut. Here, in this case, just to make things easy for visuals, I'm kind of cutting our edges off. And you also see that I kind of make a claw with my non-dominant hand, keep it back, so that as I'm cutting, and it's going to get even more important as we get into the smaller cuts, I'm keeping my fingertips away from that blade. But you still need that hand to be
So
there
you can cut your
to keep
knuckles.
it.
I like it.
Exactly. So now we, for the most part, have a very, rectangular type potato. I'm not going to worry about our ends here for this purpose, but first thing we're going to do is cut it into about 1/2 inch planks. So we're going to cut down here.
Now, it looks effortless,
It is, because it's a right knife for the task and it's sharp.
right?
So, and that's what's really important, is when you have that right knife and it's sharp, it should not be hard. It should not be hard at all. We want to make that process as easy as possible.
I mean, it looks like you're cutting butter there.
Yes.
Yeah, it does. I mean,
does.
yeah.
Exactly. So now what you see is now I have essentially, our edges are sloped, but we have a fairly uniform stick. So this could be our larger French fry, steak fries per se. So that can be that French fry, but then if we want to make our potato soup or potato salad, if we want a nice cold salad for our warm temperatures, then we go through and we do the same thing, except this time we're cutting that same cut that we did in width for our slabs, but now we're cutting it the other direction, and now we will have a cube.
Cool. Yeah, this is very cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've got our planks kind of together into a square. If you're not comfortable with that, by all means, take that off and just work with one layer at a time. Again, keep your claw going, and then you can just cut through. And you don't have to be Speedy Gonzales. Don't try to be as fast as you can until you get experienced with that knife. So
Till you can do it without cutting your knuckles.
absolutely, exactly. So that's kind of a very basic cut into our cubes. And again, it's a very easy task if we have the right knife for that task.
So, a lot of people don't like to use a big knife. I don't like to use a big knife like that. I feel more comfortable with one that's, a little smaller. I call it a granny knife. I don't know. It's probably a little bit bigger than a paring knife, but I worry about using a bigger knife like that. What do you say?
Absolutely. A bigger knife is going to get the task done more easily and more safely. If I were using even this utility / boning knife, I probably would still be cutting that potato. And you can't really get down those different layers quite as quickly. And particularly if I was using our paring knife, it's a much smaller task.
Chop. Yeah.
So, as you said, it looked like I was cutting butter. It felt like I was cutting butter. But if I were doing that same task with a potato,
But you hadn't cooked that potato head. That
I have
potato
not cooked
was
that
raw.
potato.
Right.
It was raw. It's going to be, even with a good knife that's smaller, it's still going to be a little bit harder because you're not putting quite as much effort into having a good knife that has that size, that shape, and the sharpness to it.
Okay. All right. So, what else are we going to work on there,
All right.
Chef Kimberly Baker? Yes.
Yes. So next I'm going to use our red pepper to demonstrate a julienne cut, which
Okay.
sometimes we'll see with carrots. If you have shredded carrots, sometimes we'll see it with peppers, and then we'll also break this down, the julienne cut, into what we call a brunoise cut, which is a very small dice, and you'll see this sometimes as garnish on your plate at fancy restaurants. So I always like to use a red pepper for this because it's very visual when we do this. Again, I'm going to make some waste here, not that I do that at home, but again, we just want to kind of get the point across of what kind of cuts we're looking at here. When I cut peppers, especially for this type of a cut, I'm going to cut the top off. I'm going to cut that bottom off. You can see I can cut that very easily there.
Yep.
But then also we want to take that inside piece out. So when I have my larger knife, I can just go in very carefully and cut that center out without too much maneuvering. So if you ever make stuffed peppers, one of my favorite foods that I grew up with, I didn't like them as a kid, but now I'm like, wow, I really like them now. But this is how you kind of start with a stuffed pepper. So, kind of end up cutting that center out, and then we're going to cut it down in half. And so now we have our piece of pepper. And then what we can do now, if we want to get real fancy, we can actually use our chef knife, and this is for more advanced technique. We can cut that inside membrane out. So if you ever have a pimento or pimento cheese, it's a red pepper, and that membrane is usually taken out, so you can see just that nice, beautiful red. Again, kind of how much waste you want to do and how pretty you want it to look. But once we've done that, then we can cut into our julienne. And a julienne is essentially a matchstick. So if you think of a match size, that's what we're looking for, about a 1/4 inch square. So we've already kind of got that 1/4 inch from that natural shape of the pepper. And then here we're just going to cut down. And again, I'm going to start with this tip end of my knife and just press down and rock it through. And now we have a julienne. So we're going to continue on. And again, you want to make sure that you're consistent with your cuts so you get the same sizes. So we have, again, that julienne matchstick pieces. which are really pretty, especially in salads or even as a garnish that you might be using. And then if we come and bring those together and then cut down, again, the same distance, we end up with what we call our brunoise. So, sounds fancy, so if you want to impress some dinner guests or your significant other or even your kids, then you can show them that you've got some brunoise on their plates. And that's what you see when we have a brunoise, is that tiny dice.
And yet you're still using that big knife.
I'm still using that big knife.
Yeah.
And it really is effortless. It's very easy to do. And the other thing that's nice, when you have that chef knife, is you have that ability to use it kind of as a blade to pick up these small cuts and then move them where you need them to go.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, this is fascinating here. I hope if you are listening here this afternoon, you will go back and watch this video so you can get the finer details on what Kim is doing for us right here. You are seeing this live on Facebook Live, WCRS 98.5 FM /1450 AM. It will be back there this evening, and tomorrow it will be on our website at WCRS 1450am.net. So, all right, Kim, what else are you going to do here? You look like you're getting ready to do an onion.
I am. We're going to tackle this onion. One of the biggest questions I always get is, how do we easily dice an onion?
Right.
And I can show that. So I've got a red onion. I use this for visuals. You can see that on camera a little bit better than a white onion.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is show you the tricks of the trade. So first what you're going to do is, I've peeled off kind of more of the loose layers.
Right.
Then we're going to take the stem end, so not the root end, and we're going to cut that end off. We're going to discard that piece. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and then pull off as much as we can of the extra not so pretty layers. We all know that layers have onions, or onions have layers. Sorry,
right.
Back that one up. So we want to get those pieces off. Get down to our beautiful purple onion. But what really gets to be the trick once I get these layers off is keep that root end intact. So do not cut that root end first. A lot of times we're thinking, oh, look at those roots, we got to get rid of them. You're going to, don't worry.
It's beginning to smell in here,
first.
folks. Just for the
It is. This onion has not been refrigerated, so it is going to be potent.
Yes. So I guess the roots hold everything together. Is that the trick?
That is the trick.
Yeah,
we
one
want to
trick.
Keep
I
it
guess.
together.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have our root end. We've got our other end that is already cut. So then what we want to do is, to be safe, we're going to put our onion on the cut edge, keep those roots intact, and we're going to cut right through the center of that root area, keeping both sides intact. So again, even if you notice, so this is a lot higher than our other cuts when we use with the potato and the red pepper, but you can see that the tip of my knife always hits first onto the cutting board, and then we're going to leverage it straight down. So we're going to use our claw and just leverage down and push, and then it goes right through. So once we have done that, then we're going to set one half aside, and then we're going to let the magic happen. What we're going to do is first have that root end pointed away from you. Now I'm left-handed. I kind of usually like mine a little bit more kind of at an angle, but essentially you're going to be cutting the opposite side of that root end. Also consider how big of a dice that you want of that onion. So you can be cutting, we're basically going to be making slices down that root end to the cut end. Do you want them really small, or do you want them really wide? So that's going to depend on what you're making. So we're just going to go for an average cut, but what we're going to do is, as we do that, we're going to go at an angle, and we're going to not touch about that top 1/4 to 1/2 inch piece of that onion. So we're going to start a little bit further down and cut all the way through to the cutting board into a wedge, but it's still attached to that root end. So we're going to keep following in that same pattern all the way. So this takes, and you can see I naturally kind of start putting my hand a little bit further up on the blade in this move because I'm being a little bit more intricate and purposeful in where I'm going. We're going to cut down and go through the entire onion like this.
Who said you can't do everything on the radio?
That's got to have creativity.
That's right.
So now I have cut all the way through, but we still have everything intact.
Right.
Okay. So now I'm going to turn it perpendicular to me. So now my root end is to the side versus the back. And I'm going to go ahead and then cut across the other way into the size of dice that I want. So I'm just, again, going to do about average. And we're going to cut straight down and across until we get to our root end.
And then it'll all fall apart.
And then it all falls apart. And then we end up kind of with this end, and I'll show you how we can get that back working too. But right there, you know, we have a work in progress with our onion by the natural layers as well as the 2 different cuts that we did on the perpendicular. And now we have very easily diced onions without a lot of work.
You didn't even cry.
We didn't even cry. We can smell it, but we did not cry.
Not yet.
Now, oftentimes, again, a lot of people will be like, but there's still a lot of onion here. So you can still go back, go ahead and then just do, you know, a very basic chop, you know, cut around that root. And there's still a lot of good onion that you can just go ahead and utilize right there. It might not be as pretty of a cut as those other pieces, but you can still get a lot of good use out of that area.
Now, Kim, a lot of people, there's all these chopping things you can use, chopping machines, you know, all this kind of stuff. What's your preference?
The knife.
The knife. Why? Why?
It's just easier. A lot less gadgets, doesn't take up a lot of space, and, you know, really it gets done faster. I mean, I've had a lot of those little choppers that I've been gifted and used and thought, oh, that might be kind of cool.
Right.
And then they don't work really well.
Right.
You know, they might work the first couple times, but then you really can't sharpen them.
Right.
You know, then it's just trash and then you have to get a new one. So, you know, sometimes you just stick to basics, and that's what's going to live on for a very long time and be the most economical.
Wow. All right. Well, what else you got here today on our cooking show here today?
So next I've got some garlic. This is another one that a lot of people ask, well, how do we do this? So we've got our garlic clove. You can usually just kind of get your finger in, or you can use your smaller paring knife and kind of feel into where that garlic clove might be and kind of get those layers loosened up a little bit, just depending on that garlic clove itself. And then we can pop off our garlic clove.
Well, so many times you're just using 1 clove of garlic or something, right?
Exactly, for sure. But then you think, okay, so here's my garlic clove. How do I sit here for 10 minutes and try to peel all the skin off to get down to it and then get to mincing it? So here's the trick. You've got to have a chef knife to do that. Take your little anger and stress out for the day. So take your garlic clove, put it on your cutting board. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
It sounds dangerous, folks. Okay.
It can look a little dangerous, but if you do it right, it's just fine. So we'll put our garlic clove there. We're going to put the back side, the thickest portion of our chef knife over that clove. Make a good fist, and just pop it.
Just pop it. Just pop it.
Take all of our produce everywhere. But what happens is we're going to flatten that garlic clove out. So now we've actually had a very easy peel to our garlic clove. I've done very little work to get that out.
Yep.
But then the other benefit that we're going to get is now it's a little bit more flat. So when we go to mince it, then it's not rolling over on us as we try to cut it. And, you know, when we're using a large knife with a small garlic clove, it's still going to be the most easiest way to do it. But it can look intimidating. So, you know, we want to have kind of that flat surface of that garlic clove. We're going to get our same claw that we had even with that potato in on that little garlic clove. We're going to do that same motion, except it's just smaller cuts. And so we're going to slice. If you want sliced garlic, you can go ahead and do this. See, I just kind of work my fingers back.
She's working her fingers to the bone.
Working them to the bone, absolutely. And then if you want to mince that garlic, which oftentimes we do, once you've sliced it and it's already been crushed, then you can get into that rocking motion of the knife. And so what you'll do is you'll put your heel of your hand to the more of that pointed blade piece and use the more back rocked piece of your blade. And you basically just kind of pick it up and push it down and just use your hand to pivot around, you know, almost in a fan type shape. and we're just going to kind of keep moving.
And you don't have to touch it. You don't have to touch it. That's the other thing, right?
Exactly.
Right.
You don't. So we can do that, and then once it kind of starts moving across your cutting board, then we can use that blade to get it back into a little pile and just keep on mincing. And then you can keep mincing until you get to the size that you desire. The smaller, the more flavor you'll get out of that garlic. Then once you get it all done, then again, you've got that chef knife. You can kind of push it all up onto the blade and be able to push it over onto your plate or your pot, whatever you're cooking with that needs that garlic very easily.
This is so informative. Now you got one more thing there. What do you got?
One more thing.
Wait, have you got enough time to do one more thing?
I sure do.
All right.
If you have time, I've got time.
All right, we've got a little time. I own the station. Okay.
Perfect. I can talk about this for days. So here is a cut that we're going to use with a lot of leafy vegetables or herbs, particularly herbs, but you can use the same process if you have even lettuce and making salads. But we'll often use it for basil if you're making pesto. This is a great time of year for caprese salads, which are one of my favorites. This is some tarragon, but really any leafy herb this works with, and it's called a chiffonade, which basically means to tear.
Oh, that sounds pretty fancy.
It does. So when we do that, we're going to take those leaves and we destem them and basically stack them up into a pile. Now, especially with basil, where you may have some bigger leaves and some smaller leaves, a lot of times you can tuck those smaller leaves kind of up, curled up into the larger leaf, and then you roll it up almost like a cigar, or a piece of chalk. So really as tight as possible.
Or weed.
Or possibly this.
Just for those that know about things like that. There you go.
Exactly. But we're basically going to take those leaves, get them pulled up as close as we can. And again, it's kind of that same motion we use for slicing the garlic, where we just come down and cut along.
That's a lot easier than doing one leaf at a time.
Absolutely. And when you roll them together like that, that's why you can get a lot done a lot faster. And then you're getting also consistent cuts. And so they look like little, flakes or little ribbons. So that's always a nice type of garnish that you can do with your leafy type produce.
Wow. And just think, you'll show them even more in your class, right?
Absolutely. And you get to actually try it.
Oh, okay.
So you get
All
to
right.
practice, you get to hold the knives in your hands and really put the work into it and see what it feels like.
So they don't need any knives. You'll be supplying the knives?
That's correct. Now, I've had some knife classes before where some people have wanted to bring their own knives. And that's perfectly okay if they want to have some little specific training, specific to the knives that they have. By all means, they're welcome to do that. But for the class purpose, we'll have knives for everyone to use.
Wow. And that is coming up on August 27th, 1 to 4 at the Greenwood Extension Office. The cost for that is $35. And you've just got a free pre-lesson right here on WCRS Radio. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Great.
Well, Dr. Kim Baker, I think that this is pretty fun. Now, one of the things that I know that you've got quite a mess going there, and sometimes we really don't think about, I just want to mention this about cleaning a cutting board or whatever, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that all of our surfaces are always clean. And in particular, if we're working with raw meat, that's really something we've got to be careful of. So make sure that you clean in between different items. Here today I've cut things all together. If this was all going in one soup, it's fine.
Right.
But if we were going and cutting all of this and then we were going to go and cut up some chicken for dinner, we would make sure that we actually clean and sanitize this cutting board. So we're going to make sure that we use soap. We can even use some bleach. You read the directions on your bleach. A lot of people think, well, the more bleach the better and the hotter the water, but that's really not the case. We actually want cool water with bleach and fresh solutions of bleach. A little bit goes a long way, and that can really help to sanitize. You can use different types of kitchen wipes and things like that, but again, read those directions. We usually have to have a certain amount of contact time for those cleaners to actually be effective in
So you
cleaning our
can't
surfaces.
just wipe it off real quick and use the next one. No. So let me ask you something real quick, and then I'm going to let you go. So which is better, a wooden cutting board or you've got looks like some type of plastic there?
Great question. So really the plastics are better. You can get different types. This is a flexible type cutting board. I use it when I travel because it's light and easy.
Right.
You have some of your thicker plastic ones that you can actually kind of sand down, which will last a lot longer. But we can actually bleach and clean and sanitize the plastic type cutting boards a lot more effectively than the wooden ones, because the wooden ones, of course, are porous.
Right.
They're pretty, yes, but they're not going to be the safest option, especially if we are using raw meats on them, things like that, and they take a lot more work to keep them clean and usable.
What about bamboo? A lot of things you're seeing today are bamboo.
Mm-hmm. They sure are. It's still porous, and you have to keep that intact as we use our knives on it. There's going to get grooves and nicks, and our pathogens really like those little areas, and if we get pieces of food in there, and it's like a nice warm temperature, and there's the right amount of moisture, those little bacteria are real happy in those little crevices, and that's where we get a lot of contamination. So we want something that's not porous to be able to cut on. So wooden cutting boards, we can use it as a display to serve something on, but definitely don't recommend as actually preparing and cutting our foods on for preparation.
Wow. Well, we have gotten lots of good advice. Stacy, you have been able to be quiet most of the time here today. Do you have anything to add? Have you got anything to add or anything?
No, really, I don't. I haven't learned as much as you have and everyone else has on as far as the audience is concerned. No, I've enjoyed it. I really have. And to be honest, the class that's coming up, Dr. Baker will be the lead in that class. I am not a trained chef. I am a safety agent, which I do very, very well. But she is the expert in the cuts. And so I'm glad that she was here and able to show what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be doing it. And I'm really excited about it coming up. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, that is the Knife Skills class, August 27th, 1 to 4 at the Greenwood Extension office. And again, Stacy, how do you register for that class?
You can go on eventbrite.com if you know how to get on Eventbrite. If not, you can go to our website, just the Clemson Extension, and then hit events, and then go under food safety events, and you'll see our class there. You click on it and it'll take you to Eventbrite where you can sign up at that point.
All right. Well, we have had a good time here today. Dr. Baker, I really appreciate you coming out and demonstrating, and I'm so glad all our cameras worked and everything. It really made it fun and easy on me. And you have a wealth of knowledge. I hope you'll come back and be with us on the show another time.
I would love to. I've enjoyed it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for us. Please go back and watch the video. I think you will be amazed what you have learned here. That's going to do it for us today. I will be back in the morning, and tomorrow afternoon we're going to be talking with Charles Angel over there with the new robotics building that they are building over there in Due West, and talk a little bit about the Due Westerners and what a great program they have had over there. So that's going to do it for me. This is WCRS. Have a great evening. Again, thanks for coming out today. Okay, let's cue up the music, Ann, and let's leave the show. Take it away.